You're listening to the Fierce Fatty Podcast, episode 125, Food, Faith, MLMs, and Cults. I'm your host, Vinnie Wellesby. Let's do it!
Perfect.
I'm Victoria Wellesby, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and fat activist. I have transformed my life from hating my body with desperately low self-esteem to being a courageous and confident, fierce fatty who loves every inch of this jelly. Society teaches us living in a fat body is bad, but what if we spent less time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness and instead focused on the things that actually matter, like if pineapple on pizza should be outlawed, or if the mullet was the greatest haircut of the 20th century. So, how do you stop negative beliefs about your fat body controlling your life? It's the Fierce Fatty Podcast. Let's begin. Hello, my sweaty nippled friends. How are you? How's life? Are you feeling good? I'm feeling good. Just looking for my glasses. Don't need them. Not that you know that I'm looking for my glasses. We've got a wild ride for you today. Don't know about you, but I just love learning about scams, and in fact that's my favorite genre, is a scammer. And anyway, and so true crime and anything kind of comes off of that. And I spotted an article from Jezebel, which is what started this whole thing, and I realized that I want to do an up-to-date version of this episode. Not that I've done this episode specifically, but I've talked about cults and diet culture and how it's related. I don't think I've ever spoken about MLMs specifically. I've said that they're dog shit, but yeah, and also these wacky religious groups that wouldn't necessarily be classed as a cult, but they've got some pretty interesting beliefs. And this one article really kind of put me into the rabbit hole, and it's called From NXIVM to the Way Down. Cults really love a dangerous diet culture. That should read really love a dangerous diet. Maybe... I write it down? No, that's what the title is. Yeah, that's what the title is. Anyway, yeah. So don't worry if you don't know what I'm saying when I say NXIVM or the way down. I'm gonna give you all of the details. And so we're talking about. Okay. So the way down is a documentary series. Well, where is it on? Where's it on? Amazon. I think it's on Amazon. And that came out a few months ago, maybe. All about Gwen Shamblin. Gwen Shamblin created a program called The Way Down, which is, so she was a leader of a religious group who taught that people should be thin to get into heaven. Okay, so we're talking about Gwen Shamblin. We're talking about NXIVM. So NXIVM is a MLM that turned into a cult that then had all sorts of stuff. And Keith Raniere, the leader, was sentenced to, I think, 120 years in prison. So spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Way Down and you want to see it and you don't want to know what happens, if you want to learn about NXIVM and watch the documentaries and it's on your list and you don't want any spoilers, then probably skip this episode because it's just it's filled with it. Or go and watch the things and then come back and be like, oh yeah. So we're talking about Gwen Shamblin, NXIVM, LuLaRoe, the MLM legging company, Breatharians, and talking about Stephen Hassan's BITE model in regards to describing cults, Minnesota starvation experiment, talking about what dieting does to our brains, and wrapping it all up in why do some cults, MLMs and religious groups coerce their members to diet and become thin. So here's the thread with all of this is these groups really kind of leading the way in you better be thin, you better diet, you better not eat food because then you were going to get salvation, then you were going to get promotions, then you were going to get all the riches in the world, then you're going to be your consciousness is going to be raised to a higher plane. And just an FYI, we're not saying that all religious groups do this, or that for example, Lent in the Catholic faith or Ramadan, where there is a expectation of eating less or changing the way you eat or fasting is necessarily evil or bad, or that those religions are awful. I mean, I was brought up Catholic and but still, it's not a sweeping statement of all faith is bad. And, the thing is with, growing up Catholic, if you didn't do the things for Lent, in my family anyway, then no one would say anything because no one did it anyway. So it wasn't a big deal. And so I guess it's about the coercion and the control and the messages in regards to if you don't do it, then you're a bad person and you're going to see terrible consequences in your life. And so I want to just make that differentiation there before we get into it. And a huge, giant trigger warning today, because we are going to be talking about a lot of shit, which includes starvation, abuse, coercion, child abuse and death, eating disorders, and mention of specific foods, general shitty human behavior, and power dynamics, just a lot of stuff, with mental health stuff, in regards to the effects of being on a diet. So because this is so filled with so much stuff, I won't be able to give specific trigger warnings before each instant because it's just everywhere. And so if that's not feeling good for you today, then I'll see you in the next episode. But if it is, let's go into it. And there's no, by the way, there's no gratuitous mentions of any of these things, as in we don't go into detail, but if you're kind of not feeling good, then I'd say just skip it. Just skip it. All right, okay, let's start with Gwen Shamblin. And so what I'm going to be doing is I've done a ton of research. All of the stuff that I'm talking about today, I've watched the documentaries and the different versions of the documentaries. I haven't seen the new episodes of. The Gwen Shamblin one is The Way Down. I haven't seen the new. I think there's 2 or 3 episodes that have just been released, so I haven't seen that yet. But I will be. But I've seen everything else. Yeah. So, and read the things. And I want to give you excerpts from different articles and whatnot. And the basis, like I mentioned for this episode, is from NXIVM to The Way Down, Cults Really Love a Dangerous Diet Culture, from Jezebel. Links for everything in the show notes. As always, fiercefatty.com/125. Okay, so I'm going to give you kind of a little overview of this stuff by reading from this article. Okay, Gwen Shamblin's, by the way, you should do some Googling to see what these people look like. Gwen Shamblin is a very interesting look. Gwen Shamblin's big innovation, besides that signature towering hairdo, was a new kind of divine dieting. To her, the Bible was littered with evidence that God doesn't just care about the state of our souls, he's also worried about our love handles. The fatted calf in the story of the prodigal son, an indication that the Lord is a fan of filet mignon. Shamblin's reading of Exodus revealed, however, that God frowns upon the greasy Tupperware containers in most of our fridges. Someone who sets aside leftovers apparently lacks faith that God will provide their next meal. Above all, human body fat is a physical embodiment of sin, an indicator of insufficient piety, and a departure from God's grace. By the way, also another kind of trigger warning of some of these links, not this one, but some of the links I'm sharing might have diet culture type statements in there. So just a heads up there. Okay, continuing. The Way Down, the HBO Max documentary series about Shamblin's Remnant Fellowship Church, so it's not Amazon, it's HBO, returns on Thursday with 2 new episodes. And though the story of the church is filled with its own unique peculiarities, oh my God, there's so much scandal in it. So the diet thing is just one thing. There's so much juicy shit to watch. With its own peculiarities, the weight loss theme echoes other entries in the cult media boom, particularly The Vow, which reported on the starvation diets that NXIVM urged on some of its female members. So why do these groups, which purport to be concerned with far loftier matters like God, eternity, self-actualization, and spiritual and emotional fulfillment, often seem more concerned with how much their members weigh and what they're eating? Food, says University of Pennsylvania lecturer Ori Tavor, who teaches a course on cults and new religious movements, is a very rudimentary, basic way to control. The new episodes also feature interviews with women who left Shamblin's church and describe just what it was like to be part of a community that placed explicit moral judgments on food and dieting, and reportedly punished those who did not meet the leadership's weight loss demands. Women describing told that they were too fat to be admitted to heaven, and warned that if they left the group, they would face divine retribution in form of regained pounds. A featured cult expert accurately points out that the vast majority of people who lose large amounts of weight gain it all back within 5 years. Those who left or were kicked out of the church, however, were taught to believe that their almost inevitable weight gain was the result of their fall from grace. Notice how that really echoes the big things that diet companies, diet culture says. That they like deny the reality. They gaslight you and say, oh, no, it's not our diet and dieting in general that's failed. It's you. And so Gwen Shamblin's group of besties are like, oh yeah, it's you, and we told you so. God is mad at you, girl, so you better stick with the group, because when you put on weight, because we know you will, because diets don't work, that's God mad at you. One former member describes being told to eat only 10 bites of food a day to achieve the weight loss goal the leadership set for her, and to partake in extreme fasting regimens. The starvation she experienced left her with holes in her kidneys. I mean, shit. Wouldn't you, like, if you believe in God or whatever, I don't, in case that wasn't obvious, and you thought that there was this place, heaven, where eternal, whatever happens in heaven, parties or whatever happen, and then if you're not in there, then you're missing out on the really cool party, and then you're going to go to hell or whatever, if that's what you believe in, or not, or just die. But anyway, what I'm trying to say, the stakes seem really high, don't they? Wouldn't you, if you knew that it was kind of a matter of eternal damnation or not, follow these starvation diets? I mean, shit, if that's not motivation, because, you know, normal diets, it's kind of like, well, you're going to die if you don't become thin. And then with the religious stuff on top, you're going to die and your eternal life, you're going to fuck with that, because if you're a fatty, you ain't going to get into heaven, because God doesn't like fat chicks. Okay? Even though in the Bible, it says, I think it says we love everyone, doesn't it, in the Bible? I mean, I did study theology. What a waste of an education there. I studied religious education for up until 16, and then from 16 to 18 studied theology at a higher level of education, A level. So fucking what a waste of my time and brain space. And then the teacher, who was an ex-priest, was like, oh yeah, you know, the Bible's made up, right? We all know that, but we have faith. And I was like, bitch, what? What do you mean the Bible's made up, but we have faith? I don't have faith. I thought it was real. Anyway, side note, so if you do believe in that stuff, then if it means that you're going to have to partake in eating only 10 bites of food a day, you probably do it, right? Because eternal damnation or not getting into heaven or whatever doesn't sound fun, even though it kind of goes against what's in the Bible, you know? And, you know, I'm talking shit about religion, but I think anyone can read the Bible and pick out anything that they like, right? And so this Gwen Shamblin's like, oh, God says he doesn't like a fatty. Whereas someone else could read the Bible and say, actually, God says fatty's amazing, you know? So I think you literally just read it in any way that you want it, and to make it into what you want it to say. And the people who say, oh, God loves a fatty, I'm down with that. Okay. Yeah. If God loves a fatty, yeah, that's cool. Love it. This whole kind of, you need to be doing certain things, to get into heaven. Unless those certain things are like, don't be a dick. Probably not that helpful to lead a happy life. So, Gwen Shamblin, she's all like, divorce is the worst. Don't ever get divorced. If you divorce, then, you know, you're obviously going to hell. What does she do? Of course, she divorces her husband, and she gets with a handsome former, was he like, I can't remember what he was in, like, not Baywatch, but something kind of cheesy 80s. Maybe some nameless thing. But anyway, so she gets with this guy. And his name was Joe Lara. That's it. Yeah. Joe Lara. And there's like scandal around that as well. I think he was younger than her as well. I think by a lot or something. There was some type of discrepancy there where it was kind of like, oh, this is a bit scandalous. Obviously, and then she's getting married to some guy that, you know, she said getting divorced is bad, and she gets divorced. And then in the documentary, they show their like engagement video, and it's like hilarious, like almost looks like satire. It's so cheesy. Yeah. And so anyway, long story short, he and other congregation members get in a plane. He was flying, and the plane crashed and they all died. And that happened a few years ago. But Gwen Shamblin is still Her legacy lives on. Her daughter is now running the church, or the programs, the Way Down programs, the Way Down workshops. And so here's a Bustle wrote this, which is Gwen Shamblin's Way Down workshops are unfortunately still active. And so, quote from that article, Brentwood, Tennessee seems to have a church on every corner, but one church in particular looms larger than most. Remnant Fellowship, a religious sect that serves as the subject of HBO Max's new docuseries The Way Down. Remnant was founded in 1999 by Gwen Shamblin Lara, who created a controversial diet program called the Way Down. And Way, by the way, is spelled W-E-I-G-H, obviously. Bit of a pun in there. Program called The Way Down in 1986, intended to, quote, teach people how to stop bowing down to the refrigerator and how to bow back down to God. Lara, because her name was then Gwen Shamblin Lara after she married this fella. Lara died in May 2021, okay, so only like a year ago, in a plane crash that also killed her husband Joe Lara and 5 other remnant leaders, but the Way Down programs remain popular. As detailed in the Way Down, Shamblin was raised in the Church of Christ and used her religious knowledge and training as a dietitian to devise the Way Down. The program consists of seminars and guided videos and audio tapes created by Shamblin, who believed that being thin is a reflection of purity. According to her teachings, those who are able to lose weight and keep off weight quickly are holier and closer to God. Though experts express concern that the Way Down diet eliminated exercise and did not include guidance about food selection, people were intrigued by the fact that it did not require calorie counting or restricting foods. Instead, by the way, don't get interested in this diet, it's bullshit. Instead, Shamblin encouraged her followers to eat only when they feel hunger pains, and preached to, quote, run to God every time you want to go to food. The program was introduced in the midst of the 80s diet culture, and quickly took off, according to The Way Down. It at one point spread to more than 250,000 people in over 1,400 congregations and 70 countries. The target for the workshops were women that felt they had great needs in life that weren't being spoken to by the traditional church that they were in. Reverend Rafael Martinez, a cult interventionist, explains in The Way Down, quote, therefore, the workshop becomes an outlet for these women. In 1999, Shamblin decided to break from the Church of Christ and found Remnant Fellowship under her leadership with the Way Down diet as its focus. She believed that the Christian church had been corrupted and that it was her duty to create a place of worship for, quote, true believers. However, former members claim in the docuseries that Remnant was really a way for Shamblin to accumulate wealth and power for herself and foster complete obedience to her. As former member Autumn Williams explains in the show, the workshops were all about selling Shamblin's brand. Journals, DVDs, workbooks, and tote bags were among the goods required to take the classes. Former member Rachel Phillips also says that the members had to be enrolled in Way Down class at all times and that they paid for the classes themselves. Furthermore, many former members detail abusive practices within the church, including women's complete obedience to their husbands and violence against children. So the violence against children, in the documentary, you can see there is a recording where congregation members, they're like, they talk about how should we discipline children, and they're like, you should hit them, and they were talking about, congregation members saying, oh, we've been hitting our kid, and like Gwen and someone else or some, is like, cool, that's great. And then these people who were hitting their kids hit their kid, and the child died. So continuing, After Shamblin's death, her daughter Elizabeth Shamblin Hannah assumed the primary leadership role in the church. The Way Down workshops are still available, including classes about basic weight loss and others that delve deeper into the meaning between hunger and loving God. Though the website boasts hours of free content, a subscription to Way Down TV is $19.99 a month, while a single class is $69.99. Quote, God did not put chocolate or lasagna or real blue cheese dressing on earth to torture us, but rather for our enjoyment, the website reads. However, he wants us to learn how to rise above the magnetic pull of the refrigerator so that food does not consume our lives. Which sounds kind of reasonable, right? And I think a lot of people would nod their head when they read that, saying, we don't want food to consume our lives. And, you know, even the work that I do is we don't want food to consume our lives. But this program will not do the opposite. Food will consume your life if you're not eating it, if you are turning to God every time that you feel hunger, pain, not just hungry, but you have to get so hungry that you're in pain and then turn to God instead of, quote, bowing down to the refrigerator. Yeah, so, you know, it's kind of like that bait and switch of a lot of cults, a lot of dodgy religious communities. They really prey on people who are struggling, who are looking for something. And these people are intelligent. The people who go into cults and religious sects, they're not stupid. Reading that sentence, God did not put chocolate or lasagna on earth to torture us, but rather for our enjoyment, you'd say yes. However, we want to rise above the magnetic pull. And yes, you know, if I had read that however many years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be like, yes, sign me up. And if you're searching for something, you know, and if you're religious and you're searching for kind of to be thin and that really strong desire, and I don't know what the desire is to be pious, to be in God's good graces. I don't know what that feeling is, but I can imagine it might be something similar, might involve a lot of guilt, maybe, and something that's powerful and something that's kind of maybe filled with dread if you think, oh, maybe I'm not getting into the heaven party where all the thin bitches are, you know? So, I mean, shit, that's good marketing. If I was religious and read that when I was in diet culture, I'd be like, fuck yeah, take my money. $19.99 a month to get into heaven and be thin, double whammy. Take my money. But then what you're getting is, oh, your husband's in charge and you are a greedy motherfucker and you need to be in pain before you consider eating, and instead of eating you need to do a prayer or whatever, and yeah, and it would give you just a shit ton of disordered eating. And how much shame would you feel if you left because you're turning your back on God, right? Wow, that must be hard. What are you going to do? Okay, let's move on to NXIVM. NXIVM is spelt NXIVM, November, X-ray, Indigo, Victor, Mike. And NXIVM, oh, you know what? I feel like an affinity for NXIVM. Not like I want to join, but I can imagine, like, however many years ago, I probably knew people, you know, friends of friends who were in NXIVM because it was in Vancouver as well as other places. But they had an office in Vancouver, and it was all about kind of women's empowerment and becoming the best version of yourself, and executive leadership, and attractive people who are thin, and there was some celebrities in it. And so when I worked for an organic food company, I tell you what, I feel like that was so close to all of this shit. And I feel like I could have easily been in that cult. Like, easily. Probably not actually, because I was poor. So, and it's so expensive. NXIVM is also an MLM. So if you don't know what MLM is, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? MLM. Maybe it's not. Multi-level marketing. Multi-level marketing is a great way to take money from poor people who hope that they can have an independent working arrangement. They have been cleared of not being a pyramid scheme by the, I don't know if it's FDA, some governing body in the US looked into, what's that one big one that's football players, and it's green, NutriSense or something like that. Anyway, big lawsuit, because basically the idea behind an MLM, if you're not familiar with them, is that there's a product, right? And this is what lets them still legally carry on, is that there's a product. That's like the thing. If there's no product, then it's very clearly a pyramid scheme, even though it's a pyramid scheme. There's a product, and you will start selling the product, and you'll make a little bit of money. But where your big money comes in is recruiting your mates to also sell the product. And when you recruit someone, you get like a bonus sometimes, but you also get a cut of their commission. And their commission is from selling a little bit of product, but not really. Most of the commission comes from recruiting new people, and so on and so forth. And so if you're first in on a new MLM, you might be at the top of the tree, and be making tons of money, because you'll have like your downline, which is however many people long. And so if you've got 10 people reporting directly to you, and they both have those 10 people will have 3 people reporting to them, then that's like 30 people under them, and then 10 people there. So then you've got 40 people's commission coming in. And if those 3 people each all recruit 2 people, etc., etc. But I'm not turning you on to MLMs. Don't do it. Don't start one. They're unethical. The stats around MLMs is something like 99 plus percent of people who join an MLM lose money, and it's like 0.1% of people make more than 50k, and they market it as, oh, join this MLM and you're going to be buying a fancy car and going on vacations and da-da-da-da-da. And that is true for a tiny percentage. Is this sounding familiar? Is it sounding like diets? Yes. And so you are kind of looking to those people who are making a lot of money and saying, or the people who have lost weight, which are the unicorns, and saying, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. All I need to do is hustle. All I need to do is get my head down and lose weight. Just do it. It's a matter of mind over matter. And I'm the only one responsible for my success or failure. The truth is, if you're in an MLM, you are 99% chance that you're going to fail and lose money, because it's just designed like that. And because there is a little bit of product selling, and so maybe a small percentage of what you're selling. And anyway, even if you got 100% of your revenue came from selling stuff, you get a tiny percent of like selling. Say if you're selling a legging, and the legging is, let's be generous, $50, and you get, let's be generous, let's say you get $25 for selling a legging. I mean, to make a living wage, you are going to have to be selling a ton of them. And once you've gone through your personal network, unless you're an influencer, once you've asked your friends and your mum and, you know, your long lost, you know, people that you went to school with, which is, we're all very familiar with those emails that we get, you know, from, you know, your high school bully who's like, will you buy my Tupperware? And you're like, fuck off, Michelle. Oh, Michelle Smith, she was such a bitch. And yeah, once you've done that, then it's kind of like, well, you know, and people buy stuff out of guilt, and then that's it. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, the only way I'm really going to make money is if I recruit other people to sell this shit. And really the only way they're going to make money is if they recruit people to sell this shit. And often the products are subpar and overpriced. I feel terrible for the people who are involved, who, it's like all of this stuff. They're sold a faulty bill of goods, right? They see influencers online and they see them being like, oh my God, this is my day. I wake up and I go to the pool and I'm in Mexico and look at my fancy car, and, you know, and it's not real. And even in the, they tell them, show your fancy lifestyle, show them how great it is to be a part of this program, blah, blah, blah. And so they're making shit up, and they're like buying stuff that they can't afford to promote this lifestyle so that other people can then sign up under them so that they can make money. And it's like a desperate situation for everyone. And it's like sunk cost fallacy of, you have to have a certain amount of inventory for some of these MLMs, and so you're in for, and then when you sign up, you have to pay a sign up fee, and it could be, you know, a small fee, it could be a huge fee, and you need to have a certain amount of different types of products on hand, and so you've already spent, let's say, 10 grand to get enrolled in this business, and you're a quote business owner now. And so are you going to give up? No, you're going to keep going, and you're going to keep doing and hustling, and eventually, after you've kind of realized that there's no way to make this sustainable, then people start, you know, leaving and feeling very sad about it and very embarrassed, and feeling like if only they worked harder. But that's not true, because it doesn't matter how hard they work, they are they're set up to fail. And yeah, anyway, so NXIVM was an LMM started by Keith Raniere, the creepiest motherfucker, piece of shit. Just watching him, I hate him so much. He's just he's awful in every way that human can be awful, and including everything you can imagine that an awful person could do. Allegedly, so what NXIVM turned into was kind of like self-development. Like, you take the first course, and then you take the next course, and then, you know, get other people in, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this, quoting from the same Jezebel article that started all of this, is, quote, NXIVM, by contrast, wasn't a religious group, but a self-help, multi-level marketing scheme. Still, like the Remnant Fellowship, weight loss seems often to have been placed at the forefront of members' minds. Women who left the group have described being put on diets that restricted them to just 800 calories per day, less than half of blah, blah, blah. In this group, women's body fat wasn't an affront to God, but a personal affront to the cult's founder, Keith Raniere, who has been accused of sexual abuse. He's been accused and convicted of it. Extreme dietary restrictions pop up again and again in stories of cults' high control groups. Jim Jones wired People's Temple members' mouths shut when he deemed them fat. And Michelle Pfeiffer once described falling in with a controlling group of breatharians, people who believe they can survive purely on light without eating food or water. Unsurprisingly, the ideology has been linked to several deaths. So here's a quote from a different article, which is by Insider, who says, ex-members of NXIVM say leader Keith Raniere brainwashed women into starving themselves. Quote, during Raniere's lifetime prison sentence hearing on October 27th, Former members talked about Ranieri's request for diet restriction among multiple women members, including those in NXIVM's secret sorority, DOS. DOS stands for, I want to Google it, Dominus Obsequitum something. DOS, NXIVM, NXVIM, meaning. And so there's this like subgroup that he siloed women he wanted to have sex with in so it was kind of basically he founded the group, but it was like we founded it, the women, but it didn't, because they called it DOS, and it was basically, DOS means master over slave, something like that. Let me see. Come on, Google, put it right in front of me so I don't have to search and click things. DOS, here we go. Let's click onto DOS. Oh no, it just goes to Keith Raniere. Annoying. Anyway, watch the documentaries that I'm going to mention, and you'll see. It's is it like Greek or something? Dominus Obsequium, blah blah blah. DOS. Bear with me, caller. Okay, so stands for Dominus Obsequius Sororium, which according to one member means master over slave women. And so that's what he was doing, is he was like the puppet master. And Alison Mack, who is an actor from Smallville, I think, from the top of my head, she was the like quote leader, but really it was Keith behind the scenes. And it was all about it's like 100% fucked up, but all of it's fucked up, but this is like extra fucked up, of basically coercion, getting them to eventually have sex with Keith, and getting them into a really kind of submissive state and really controlled state, because they had to eat a tiny amount of food. They had to constantly be in contact with their quote master. And so for some people it was Alison Mack, and then other people then had people reporting to them. And so Alison Mack would be like, show me an image of what you're eating, and if you've eaten too much, then you have to be punished for that. And also they would have these things called readiness drills, where Alison Mack, or whoever is your master, would send a text any time of the day and night, and within an X amount of minutes you had to respond. And so she would send a text saying ready, and then you would have to respond ready within X amount of minutes. And if you didn't, and so these people were sleep deprived, they were starved, and then they were branded, and they were branded with this what they thought was something to represent like the earth and the sea or whatever, but actually it was Keith Raniere's initials, and also maybe Alison Mack's initials into this like symbol, which when you turned it around, and he had them branded close to their vulvas. And so lots of fun. Let me continue. According to India Oxenberg, India was in DOS, who executive produced the docuseries Seduced, about her 7 years in the cult and 2 years as a DOS sex slave. Raniere framed diet restriction as the ultimate show of self-improvement and convinced some followers to believe that. In reality, Raniere restricted women's diets to make them look more childlike, Oxenberg said during her victim impact statement at the sentencing. And that is something as well. He's been accused of raping underage, raping children, so it lines up. And as well, I'm thinking about this, about men's obsession with women looking like children, and how fucking creepy that is, and in regards to size too, and the idea that we sometimes you can look back and be like, oh, when I was in the prom, I was only this size and now I'm 30 and I'm this size and I've put on so much weight and I was so much better looking then. And it's like, you were a child. Like, why do we want to look like children? And the reason is because a lot of, patriarchy and sexism and all that type of stuff teaches men that is what is attractive, and teaches everyone else, if they want to attract men, that they better look like children, basically. Let's continue. During an appearance on Dr. Oz that airs October 29th, former member Tabby Chapman said Raniere falsely told her diet restriction was a useful tool for self-improvement. I was originally food restricted because Keith had everyone convinced that the fastest way to work on your issues was to work on your relationship with food. She said she often wondered how eating fewer calories would lead to her business success, but continued to eat between 500 and 900 calories daily as Raniere requested. Raniere, 60, was sentenced to 120 years in prison after being found guilty of child sex trafficking and conspiracy to commit forced labor. Yes, and I really, this person who's saying this, Tabby Chapman, she was confused how eating calories would lead to her business success. Eating fewer calories would lead to business success. I can really see that thinking, because I would think that, really. I mean, and the reality is, if you do have a smaller body, you probably will have more success in business. As we know, fat people are hired less and paid less. And so there is truth to it. But these people, all of them were thin to start with. They were not letting in fatties into this inner circle DOS. I don't know if they let fatties into even the just basic NXIVM groups. So these are people who were already thin, right? So, and really, so he's like, I could see that, like, I can see myself falling for that, being like, yeah, if I fix my relationship with food, because clearly I have a fucked up relationship with food because I'm fat. And the reality was I had a fucked up relationship with food because I had restricted so much in my life. Not because I was fat. But being fat, obviously, that I'm like, well, that's why I need to restrict, because I need to show to the world that I've got my shit together. And a big part of, before I started getting into wanting to be a career coach, because I was in recruitment for a number of years, is a big hesitation of mine was like, well, how can I be a career coach if I am fat? Because clearly I don't know shit about shit because I'm fat. So I can totally understand how people could get sucked up into that. Sort out your relationship with food, become thin, and then you're going to be a millionaire. I mean, there is some truth in that. But Keith was using it as, not necessarily he wants them to have success. He probably did, because they all were free labor for him. He didn't pay anyone, and everyone gave him tons of donations. And so he used it, I think, a little bit for that, but also to get them looking in a certain way that was more pleasing to his sensibilities, which were fucked up. And also because they became so pliable. We're going to talk about later exactly what happens when you don't eat enough food. And so if these women were like starving, sleep deprived, and then they had the chance to win their leader's affections by having sex with him, I mean, they would. I mean, it's easier for him to get that type of person who has been groomed into having sex with him versus just some random person off the street. If he just grabbed some random person who had had enough sleep, who had been eating, who had not been brainwashed for all of these years, and it was like, hey, have sex with me, they'd be like, fuck off. unless they wanted to, but these people were so, because of the state that he put them in, because of what he had done to them, more likely to do anything that he wants, which also included, because he would draft in people who were rich, giving him millions of dollars. So if you want to learn more about NXIVM, go and watch. There might even be 3 documentaries. The 2 that I know of is The Vow and Seduced. And I listened to a podcast from CBC called Uncover. That's where I first learned about this stuff. And then the 2 documentaries came out close to each other. Alison Mack. I don't know if she was sentenced yet, but I think she was found guilty. Alison Mack. And I mean, it's just wild. And I think she's a big victim, although she did perpetrate a lot of things too. Mack sentencing. Let's see. Sentence. Okay, sentenced to 3 years in prison for sex slavery. Okay, so hopefully she can continue with her life, because I don't think Alison Mack was like, she wasn't Keith Raniere, she did some fucked up things, but hopefully she's able to heal from all that stuff, and everyone else who was in it able to heal. Okay, so let's move to LuLaRoe. LuLaRoe is another MLM, not as extreme as NXIVM, but LuLaRoe, I think they've shut down now because of all the scandal. LuLaRoe, is it still going? LuLaRoe, let's have a look. So they sell leggings, right? Yep, still going. Don't get into it. Please don't get into an MLM. Because you will lose your money. And even buying stuff from the thing, a lot of times the stuff is really low quality. I mean, not always, who knows? Maybe there are places that have nice stuff, but yeah. Okay, so LuLaRoe, founder. This is an article written by our friend Reagan Chastain. LuLaRoe founder profits from sending consultants to Mexico for weight loss surgery. Of course she does. Okay, article from Ravishly. Links in the bio. fistfighter.com / where are we at? 125. If you always forget the episode number, you can always go to fistfighter.com / podcast for the latest and greatest. Okay, so LuLaRoe, this is from the article. So Reagan talks about, what they do for business and blah, blah, blah. But it turns out that the business owner and her sister were quietly developing another stream of income, aside from scamming people into selling their leggings and recruiting people. 4 consultants interviewed by Bloomberg reported that they were pressured by founder Deanne Brady or her sister Lene to go to Tijuana, Mexico to have so-called weight loss surgery. Sam Schultz, the sister's nephew, explained, Lene charges $5,000, but it costs $4,000. You pay her through PayPal, she gets a cut, then takes you to Mexico. Consultant Courtney says the sisters refer to themselves as the Tijuana Skinnies. Stacy Christina, a LuLaRoe consultant, told Bloomberg, I was told by Deanne herself that she likes her leaders to be a size small or medium. Let's be clear about what's going on here. Not happy enough with cheating fat consultants out of their money through her pyramid scheme, LuLaRoe's leader was making $1,000 a pop for sending fat independent consultants to Mexico to have a surgery that may leave them thin or maimed or dead. The, quote, skinny sisters work with a clinic called, I'm not even kidding you, Obesity Not For Me, the number 4. If the name alone doesn't convince you that this place is totally legit, try these quotes from their website. In bypass surgery, the patient may have small diarrhea when they eat too much or they eat food that contains too much fat. What they are talking about is called dumping syndrome, and as the name may have already implied, there's nothing small about it and cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, rapid or irregular heartbeat, hypoglycemia, and it can require surgical intervention. They claim that, quote, the complications of these procedures are similar to any other abdominal surgery. I mean, if you listen to our surgery episode a few episodes ago, you know how fucking false that is. Reagan says that's massively misleading, since other abdominal surgeries seek to cure disease for health, and this one seeks to take healthy organs and create a disease state in them for weight loss. People are allowed to do whatever they want with their bodies, including amputating their stomachs. The point here is that the founder of LuLaRoe is not just encouraging, but profiting from pushing her workforce to go to a questionable clinic that is not honest about the potential dangers of the surgery. While the leadership seems to have a, quote, no fat chicks policy when it comes to upper level consultants, they are willing to take fat people's money. LuLaRoe's sizing can be complicated, but they do claim to have sizes up to 3x, so they seem to be comfortable taking fat people's money while engaging in active fat phobia when it comes to their workforce. It's true that fat people get hired less and paid less than thin people. Sadly, companies like LuLaRoe are often touted as a way to escape this discrimination by creating one's own business. The actual solution would be to end fat phobia, but that's a subject for another article. So it's extra disappointing that a company that is built around the idea of empowering women is in fact leveraging the damage to income potential created by fat phobia as a way to profit from that same fat phobia, all the while putting fat people at risk. Yes, Reagan. Slam dunk. Can you imagine? I mean, your workplace and your manager says, oh, we're going down to Mexico to get our stomachs amputated. Come on, girl. You're fat and ugly. Let's go, girl. Yeah, okay, here's another article. Thousands of women say LuLaRoe's legging empire is a scam. This is from Bloomberg. This is the article that Reagan was quoting. But another little quote in here is, it wasn't the first time things at LuLaRoe had gotten weird for her. In November 2016, Harwood had traveled with Deanne to a handful of conventions to talk about her success at the company. At dinner in Detroit one evening, Deanne asked if she had any interest in getting gastric surgery. She's like, Courtney, oh my God, you have got to go get it. I'll have my sister call you next week. Harwood says, 4 people I spoke to for this story say that they'd been approached by either Deanne or her sister, Lene Knapp, who offered to take them to Tijuana. Fun. And we're not even talking about, this is a fucking legging company. It's not a fitness company, you know. We're not even talking about all of the absolute dog shit MLMs that are, there's one, what's it called? It Works and Beachbody. Beachbody. Oh my God. And so imagine then if you worked for one of those MLMs. Ooh, Nelly. I mean, I was going to say, would they even let you join? Fuck yeah, they're going to let you join. They're going to take fat people's money. Are they? Imagine the amount of bullshit that you're going to be hearing. Ooh, I don't even want to think about it. Oh God, and all the lies and all the scams. I follow a few like anti-MLM accounts and seeing all of the scams that these motherfuckers pull, like stealing people's photos. There was this one person who was stealing photos of someone who had a tummy tuck and saying, this is the results if you eat my whatever it is, if you drink my juices or if you follow my program. And it's like, they had fucking surgery. And people are like calling them out and they're like, oh no, not me, I'm not telling lies. I mean, they've got to, if they're going to have to try and have a business, because they're not going to have people's pictures to show of the results, because as we know, diets don't work. well, they work temporarily, right? Let's move on to the breatharians. So, you've got vegetarian, you've got pescatarian, and we've got breatharians, which is what you think it is. People who think that they can survive just by breathing and not by eating or drinking water. If you're curious if that's a thing and it works, and no, people die. And the people who are leaders in this arena are lying. Basically, they eat food, because if they didn't, they'd be dead. And yeah, so here's an article, quotes from an article from GQ, and it's called "The People Who Think Air is Food." They call themselves breatharians, a new-ish kind of spirituality that dubiously believes that the human body can and should sustain itself not on food but on air and, quote, universal energy. Are these people really not eating? Brina Kerr spent 7 days at a breatharian retreat in North Carolina to find out. So it's a long article. Go read it. It's interesting. So it starts, do you need to eat to live? Most people would say yes, but there's a small group of people, self-proclaimed breatharians, who might say no, not necessarily. By the way, big disclaimer, you need to eat food to live. Okay, there's no kind of way around this. There's no, they've not found out some system or trick or whatever. Please eat food. Okay, what I'm reading here is a ton of bullshit and is very dangerous. Okay, eat food. All right, we need food. We can't survive by breathing. I mean, you need to breathe, but you need to breathe and eat food. Okay, so through the fringe philosophy, though the fringe philosophy has existed in its modern incarnation since at least the 1970s and is modeled after religious ascetics of old, I hadn't heard of breatharians until a New York Post article that went viral in early June. The title, like most tabloid headlines, is a complete sentence that reads like a factful, vetted discovery. Breatharian couple survives on the universe's energy instead of food. That couple, a life coaching duo named Akahi Ricardo and Camila Castillo, belong to a community of people who believe you don't need food to live, that surviving on non-food substance like sunlight, air, and prana allows people to live more evolved, healthily spiritual lives. I wonder as well, like, how much of this is people stealing from other cultures and their ideas, kind of like how people are taking from the Bible, and it's like, the Bible says that you have to do this, and it's not true. And these presumably white people, I bet you they're white. Let me Google it. Camila Castillo. Taking things like concepts like prana and then being like, oh, okay, yeah, she's white. Maybe. Because there's just lots of different Camila Castillo. Anyway, whatever. No matter who they are, they're teaching bullshit, right? Let's have a look. Okay, here's the New York Post thing. Okay, so who knows? Anyway, moving on. So they're taking concepts probably that aren't theirs to take and just making it into a ton of bullshit. Okay, so all the retreat goers intend to complete the suggested fast. No food or water for 3 days and only juice for another 4. Going without water is something that most doctors consider dangerous, but for breatharians, an initiation fast is essential for beginning a life where food is optional. There will be no doctors present at the retreat, and the only thing remotely resembling medical oversight will be a white box called a biowell that is supposedly measures the human energy field and chakra alignment. And that ends up having broken in transit on its way to the retreat. Oh dear. So no medical oversight. Not sure that this box would have done anything anyway. Later, I asked Ricardo, why do this? Why give up a central part of human life, go against medical advice when there are so many spiritual practices out there that don't require you to give up food? His answer surprises me. When I started this, I felt cleaner. I felt sharper, he tells me. Pausing, I felt fearless. Yeah, that word cleaner. Sharper. What does that sharper? Angular, not fat. Cleaner. Clean. Makes you think of food is dirty, fatness is dirty. Driving back to the Breatharian house 2 days later, I feel a mounting sense of dread. It's been 2.5 days since the participants had food or water, and I can't stop thinking about Verity Lynn, the woman who died emaciated and alone on a remote shore in the Scottish Highlands in 1999. Among her belongings was a diary that chronicled her food and water-free spiritual cleanse, and a copy of the book Living on Light, written by preeminent Breatharian Ellen Jasmuheen Grieve. So this person, Verity Lynn, died 7 days into a 21-day fast. And she was following this person who was obviously a scammer, who wrote a book, Living on Light, and she claimed she didn't eat anything, didn't drink anything, and there was a documentary which I was able to find a snippet of, and it's an old documentary, right? So this person died in 1999, and the documentary I think was made near there, where 60 Minutes, which is an Australian show, met with Jasmuheen, which is the person who wrote Living on Light, and confronted her. And then they said, well, what if we locked you up and said you can't eat or drink for 21 days, you would die? And she was like, no, I'd happily do it. It would be a vacation for me. And so they said, okay, let's do it. And so they did it, and we've got this kind of snippet from the program of, within a day, she is not doing well, and they have to end the experiment because they were worried that she was going to die. But she was like, I'm fine, don't worry about me, even though she was slurring her words and was so dangerously dehydrated that the medical professional was like, this is really unethical to continue because she's going to die. But okay, continuing with this article, Breatharian leaders have oft been undressed in public. Jasmuheen was humiliated by a 60 Minutes episode in which she started to fail and slur during a monitored dry fast. An early Breatharian leader, Wiley Brooks, who claims that all foods and liquids are poisonous, saw many of his followers dispatch in 1983 after he was spotted grabbing takeout, including, allegedly, a chicken pot pie and biscuits at a hotel and groceries from 7-Eleven. I just love it. I love it, fucking chicken pot pie. Because obviously they can't be alive if they don't eat. And I think that's what it's like with these breatharians, that is the worst, is when they're just like, I literally don't eat. And then you have people who, and this person, Verity Lynn, who died, she's not the only one. Lots of people have died because of it, because they believe what these people are saying, and they follow them and they die. And the leaders are like, yeah, but like, LOL, secretly I'm going to 7-Eleven and I'm eating a chicken pot pie, and which they should, because they're human and they need to eat. Yeah, if you want to see that snippet from the documentary, it's not very good quality, but it's in the show notes as well. But I have to wonder, this is continuing in the article, is all this inner peace just a symptom of starvation? Because, all these people on the retreat are like, I feel amazing. And so the documentarian, the reporter, is saying, is that inner peace or is that starvation? Dr. Perry G. Fine, a professor of anesthesiology at the University of Utah, has worked with terminally ill patients who decide to stop eating as a way of peacefully ending their lives. Patients often, quote from him, patients have oftentimes described themselves as entering a transcendental, blissful or euphoric state after they stop eating, he tells me, though pain-killing drugs exaggerate the phenomenon in some. But that doesn't mean it's a positive thing if the brain is being starved of nutrition and hydration. You may have a sense of well-being, but you might be doing harm to yourself, he says. might be doing harm to yourself. He says, I think definitely are doing harm to yourself. And let's look at the well-known Minnesota starvation studies to know what dieting, not eating, or eating less food than we need, and even not even that less, does to our minds. And I have a whole episode on the psychology of hunger, which is episode 94, and it's called The Psychology of Hunger, where we go into the Minnesota starvation experiment and also the Warsaw-Warszawa study, which Jewish people, when they were in the ghettos, they studied what starvation did to their fellow inmates, the fellow people in the ghetto, which is pretty incredible that they were thinking about science when they were literally being murdered. So let's look at this. The Minnesota starvation study quickly we are looking at a study that was conducted in around Second World War, 1944. Ansel Keys wanted to study the effects of starvation to help with the war effort because there was a ton of starvation going on. They got 36 white men aged 22 to 33. And they were conscientious objectors, and so they really wanted to help with the war effort without violence. And so they were very eager participants, and they were assessed to make sure that they were physically and psychologically well. They had to be able to get along with the other people and be very resilient. And so these were very kind of robust men who were doing this. And so they did 6 months of semi-starvation at 1,570 calories a day. Let me just repeat that. In this starvation experiment, the men were given 1,570 calories a day. How many diets do we know of that the amount of calories that are prescribed are less than that? Noom. 1,200 calories. I mean, many of them, right? And so this is their starvation diet of 1,570 calories. And the foods that they were given were foods that were common foods: potatoes, rutabagas, turnips, bread, macaroni, cabbage, and meat and dairy products. So there's a photo I saw of a really thin man licking his plate at the dinner table, which was apparently common alongside other behaviors. So, quote, they diluted potatoes with water, held bites in their mouths for a long time without swallowing, or labored over combining the food on the plate, making weird and seemingly distasteful concoctions. So at 1,570 calories for 6 months, they were becoming obsessed with their food. Quote, standing in line at the diet kitchen before being served was a source of explosive conduct. At the table, they often turned on one another, annoyed by each other's voices and the increasingly strange habits that many men developed. They would coddle the food like a baby or handle it and look over it as if they would some gold. They played with it like kids making mud pies. Food became the sole source of fascination and motivation. Many men became obsessively collecting recipes. Stayed up until 5 a.m. last night studying cookbooks, wrote one. They found themselves distracted by constant daydreams of food. Some sublimated their cravings by purchasing or stealing food. One man began stealing cups from coffee shops. They guzzled water, seeking fullness. Some took up smoking to stave off hunger, and others chewed up to 30 packs of gum a day until the laboratory banned it. Meanwhile, all other elements of life seemed to fade into mere background noise. Over and over again, the researchers reported indifference and boredom when it came to personal development and basic socializing. Budding romances collapsed and sexual desire evaporated. At parties, the subjects found conversation both difficult and pointless. They all preferred a solitary trip to the movies, adding that while they could recognize comedy, they never felt compelled to laugh anymore. In a store, when shopping, they were easily pushed around by the crowd. the research team reported. Their usual reaction was resignation. Sometimes this permeating dullness gave way to moments of inexplicable euphoria, followed by an emotional crash. One subject was eventually eliminated from the project for sneaking unauthorized food in town. After doing so, he found himself so high that he stopped at 17 soda shops on the walk home. He kidded with the fountain girls, thought the lights were more beautiful than ever, felt that the world was a very happy place. The researchers reported this degenerated into a period of extreme pessimism and remorse. He felt he had nothing to live for and that he had failed miserably to keep his commitment of staying on reduced rations. Entering the rehabilitation period, and so rehabilitation, they were increased their calories to, I think, 2,000 or something. So a surprising finding was that even though they were now allowed food, their mental health continued to decline. The results of this is that there were significant increases in depression, hysteria, hypochondriasis, as measures using the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. Most of the subjects experienced periods of severe emotional distress and depression, as well as significant decreases in their strength and stamina, body temperature, heart rate, and sex drive, and a gaunt appearance. The psychological effects were significant as well. Hunger made the men obsessed with food. They would dream and fantasize about food, read and talk about food, and savor the 2 meals a day they were given. They reported fatigue, irritability, depression, apathy. Interestingly, the men also reported decreases in mental ability. Signs of social withdrawal and isolation, a decline in concentration, comprehension, and judgment capabilities. Some of the subjects exhibited edema in their extremities, presumably due to increased levels of plasma proteins, given that the body's ability to construct key proteins like albumin is based on available energy sources. During the rehab phase, which was said to be the most difficult phase, one man, Sam Legg, chopped off 3 of his fingers with an axe. Let me repeat that. During the rehab phase, which is said to be the most difficult, this is when they've had about 2,000 calories, I think, or more, Sam Legg chopped off 3 of his fingers with an axe. Sam said he didn't know if he did it deliberately or not. I admit to being crazy mixed up at the time, Legg later explained. I am not ready to say I did it on purpose. I am not ready to say I didn't. Quote, deprivation itself drove these men to the threshold of insanity. Even after the study ended, there were reports of men still being incredibly fixated on food. One man even had to go to hospital for 7 days after having his stomach pumped. Others said that they ate constantly. So that is 6 months of 1,570 calories. And these were people who were allegedly, seemingly robust physically and psychologically. And they were very, very motivated because they were conscientious objectors. There was a lot of shame around that these people were not in the war, they were not fighting for their country, and so they had the opportunity to redeem themselves by being good participants in this study. And so there was a lot of pressure that they'd put on themselves, maybe society as well. And this was important work to see how starvation affected people and how the refeeding stage might go. And so that is what it does. I mean, ethically now, I'm not sure if they could repeat this study. Especially now with what we know. I mean, could you repeat a study where a man cut off his fingers? And I would love to know what happened to these men afterwards, long term. And, all of this stuff is extreme, but it's at a, quote, normal amount of calorie restriction that we'd see for an average diet, not even a fad diet. Fad is, I'm big quotations around fad because all diets are fad diets, but, the diets where it's kind of like extra extreme. I mean, it's not even an extra extreme diet, and that is what it's doing to the participants. Okay, so I have another episode, which is episode 41, is Diet Culture a Cult? And I just want to talk about the model that Stephen Hassan developed called the BITE model, which describes the specific methods that cults use to recruit and maintain control over people. And BITE stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Now, the episode goes deep into this stuff, and I'm just going to pick out certain things from the BITE model just to illustrate them for you, so you can be like, okay. And so if you're thinking, is something a cult, we would use the BITE model to say, okay, well, it has this. So let's have a look. So behavior control. So these are the warning signs, right? Like, is this a cult? Regulate diet, food, drink, hunger, and or fasting. Well, ding, 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 ding. That's what we've been talking about today. Major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. Rewards and punishments used to modify behavior, both positive and negative. Well, rewards like getting into heaven. Rewards like getting a promotion with LuLaRoe. Impose rigid rules and regulations. Instill dependency and obedience. So that's behavior. Obviously, it's a lot more, but I'm just picking out things. Information control. So there's deception. So deliberately withhold information, distort information to make it more accessible. Okay, withholding information, like with the whole thing about even dieting, that it is not something that is, losing weight is not achievable. That the being thing is going to get you into heaven. That with MLMs, I'm just calling them M&Ms, with M&Ms, that you were going to make tons of money and become rich, and you're going to be successful if you get stomach amputation surgery because you're going to be taken into a leadership role. Compartmentalize information into outsider versus insider doctrines. And you see this a lot with M&Ms, that they'll be like, oh, the haters say that you can't make money from an LMM, but they're just haters. They don't know anything. They say that we're a pyramid scheme, but we're not. Any company is a pyramid scheme because there's a CEO on top and there's employees on the bottom. They're the real pyramid scheme. And also, like with NXIVM and stuff, it's kind of like very kind of suspicious of outsiders. Extensive use of cult-generated information and propaganda, including newsletters, magazines, videos, YouTube, misquoting statements or using them out of context from non-cult sources. Okay, so let's move to T in the BITE model. Thought control. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. Adopting the group's map of reality. Instill black and white thinking. Decide between good and evil. Organize people into us versus them, insiders versus outsiders. Teaching thought-stopping techniques which shut down reality testing by stopping negative thoughts and allowing only positive thoughts, including denying the reality of hunger and misery, being on a diet. And as well, if we think about with M&Ms, the idea of you feel like you're doing bad because you're letting negativity into it, positive vibes only, like just hustle and you'll see success. Rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, constructive criticism. Yeah, so you see a lot of people, if anyone criticizes the leader, if anyone criticizes the organization, they are ostracized, they are told that you can't do that. Forbid critical questions about leader, doctrine, or policy allowed. Labeling alternative belief systems as illegitimate, evil, or not useful. Instill a new map of reality. If you become thin, then XYZ, magical thinking will happen. And finally, emotional control. So manipulate and narrow the range of feelings. Some emotions and or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish. Yeah, so feeling hungry, needing food is wrong. Fear that the diet doesn't work, that's wrong. making the person feel that the problem is always their own fault, never the leader or the group's fault. It's not that the diet failed, you failed. Promote feelings of guilt or unworthiness. Instill fear. So it's not safe as food is unhealthy. We don't know how many calories certain things contain. The hope that you will be good if you're thin. Extremes of emotional highs and lows. So when you lose weight, how good do you feel? If you put on weight, how bad do you feel? And the praise that you get from the group if you lose weight, and then how bad you feel if you've put on weight, what they're thinking about you. I know when I was a Weight Watchers, I used to weigh people in Weight Watchers, and I would be judging people so bad when they put on weight, and they'd like, I don't know how this happened. I didn't eat anything all week, and I'd be thinking, yeah, I'm sure you didn't. Okay, so no happiness or fulfillment possible outside of the group, and terrible consequences if you leave. So especially with the getting into heaven if you're thin, death, unlovable, not able to play with your kids if you leave the diet, partner thinks you're ugly, family will reject you if you're fat. Yeah. So that's the bite model. So wrapping it all up, why do some cults, MLMs, and religious groups coerce their members to diet and become thin? Well, let's wrap up with reading a little bit more from this Jezebel article. I think this is going to turn into the longest episode ever. So, from Jezebel article, this sort of dangerous dieting can serve paradoxical purposes, making followers feel that they have power over their lives and bodies while they're actually relinquishing their autonomy. It gives the believer a sense of control over their own destiny. I'm only going to eat these types of food. I'm going to abstain from that type of food, says Tafel. But it also allows the group to control the individual. The remnant fellowships may represent a dangerous extreme, but religious and spiritual movements have always constructed dietary mandates. Food is a powerful determiner of group identities, and rules surrounding it are deployed across cultures and faiths. It's like clothes, says Tafel. Why is a certain type of clothes or hairstyle such an integral part of religious identity? Because it's a very easy marker to demarcate an in-group and differentiate themselves from outsiders. However, keeping kosher, fasting for Ramadan, or opting for vegetarian dinner on Fridays are all compatible with meeting nutritional needs. And in most mainstream religious communities, believers can pick and choose which dietary restrictions to follow without fear of being ostracized. People can live perfectly healthy lives, never eating a piece of pork, says Gillespie. But when it's like, don't eat the things that you want to eat or that your body is telling you should eat, that's when it starts to get more risky in terms of developing disorders. The preferred diets of religious groups also have a history of working their way into secular culture. Early Seventh-day Adventists helped create the wellness industry and advocated for vegetarianism and abstaining from sex and alcohol in pursuit of physical health and spiritual purity. Leaders of the church, said Tafel, really popularized the idea of this pure, almost vegan diet that was supposed to detox you spiritually and physically. Sylvester Graham, that motherfucker, who helped popularize vegetarianism in the US, was a Presbyterian minister who issued dietary guidelines that he believed would stave off moral decay. Eating the graham cracker he invented, he promised, would help prevent kids from masturbating. That's right, campfire s'mores were initially supposed to stop you from heading back to the tent and jerking it. That's why I hate this guy so much. Sylvester Graham is a piece of shit, because he was basically like, everything that you do as a human is bad, and he really popularized circumcision. And that circumcision means you can't wank, is his thoughts. And so if you really believed in God, you would circumcise your children so that they cannot masturbate, therefore they're more likely to get into heaven, and circumcision is all kinds of fucked up and an awful act that's happily is falling out of fashion in a lot of cultures. And as a British person, like, circumcision is you know, a very small percentage of babies are circumcised. I think in Canada it's around about the 30% nowadays, which is obviously still too much. So the contemporary American health food industry has roots in 60s counterculture embrace of new religious movements as devotees started brands and shops selling the preferred varieties of grub. This historical melding of food and faith can be seen in the moralizing way we still talk about nutrition, with foods labeled as good or bad, natural, unnatural, or clean. Also, this is me talking now. Also, we don't talk about in this article, like, where did Sylvester Graham get his ideas from? And if we think about the racist origins of all of this stuff and the ideas that black folks were only interested in food and fornication, which also links that, you know, Sylvester Graham wanting people to eat his graham crackers and not masturbate and getting their foreskins amputated in order so that they can't masturbate, lines up with those racist ideas that to be white is to be not interested in food and sex, because that is a quote black trait, which is obviously wrong and obviously fucked up. So in summary, why do some cults, MLMs, and religious groups coerce their members to diet and become thin? Well, I think, you know, it's three reasons. First is fat phobia. That's the underlying belief. Fat phobia, the belief that a fat body or a body that isn't thin is bad, immoral, a sign of sin, a bad representation for the group. The second thing is sacrifice and piety. To show that you're really dedicated to the cause, there is an expectation that you will modify your behavior. And having a body that is thin is a walking billboard of your devotion to the cause, to the company. And finally, control. So weight loss can have devastating effects on our bodies and our minds, making us pliable, exhausted, confused, obsessed with food, weak, unstable, and desperate for salvation through our efforts. Perhaps the leader will notice us and we will be anointed as redeemable and good. So how much of this ties into what diet culture does to us? I mean, I think a lot. A basis of fat phobia, the idea that you're good if you diet, and being controlled by a force that you are seeking approval from, and that approval will probably never come. In this case, society and oppressive systems that are designed to keep you distracted. So I've made a Venn diagram, which I'm still working on, but the Venn diagram has diet culture, MLMs, and cults all overlapping. So it's three circles all overlapping. And in that, I've got, you know, how diet culture is related to MLMs, how MLMs are related to cults, and how cults are related to diet culture. And the thing that ties them all together is fat phobia. And so I'm going to have that on my Instagram by the time this episode comes out. And so if you want to share these ideas about how they're all interconnected, and how in the core of all of it is fat phobia, the belief that fatness is bad and thinness will get you into heaven. Thinness will mean that you're a better person, that you're more devoted, that you're more presentable, and someone that the company or the cult want to have in their community. So, okay, so we're at 19 minutes. You know what? It's fucking 2 p.m. my time now, and I'm fucking starving after listening to all of this. Well, I was talking about it, but also it's past my lunchtime. I mean, oh my goodness, how much this is. I'm feeling this right now. I am hungry, and my skin is hot, and I feel like electric feelings over my skin. This is what hunger feels like for me. My tummy is rumbling. Luckily, I have food ready to go, so I won't die. All right, this has been a kind of intense episode. So go and have a deep breath and do some relaxing. And if you're like me, you're probably going to go and watch everything and read everything that's related to this stuff, because I find it super interesting. Again, you can go to the show notes, fiercefatty.com/125. If you like this episode and if you like the podcast in general, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. I will be eternally grateful. It'll make me so happy, and it means that other people can find the podcast. So yeah. All right, well, I'll see you on the next episode. Stay fierce, fatty. See you in a while. Alligator. Goodbye. Thanks for listening to the episode. And if you feel ready to get serious about this work and want to know when the doors open to Fierce Fatty Academy, which is my signature program where I teach all about how to overcome your fat phobic beliefs and learn to love your fat body, then go to fiercefatty.com/waitlist. Again, that is fiercefatty.com/waitlist to get your name on the waitlist for when Fierce Fatty Academy, my signature program, opens.